Hey, it's you, man, from KC95 here. Good evening and welcome to Toasted Tavern. Your host, Scott Tobin, and the man called Wags are ready to bring you the night in sports. So pull up a stool, grab a drink, and let's get toasted.
And good evening and welcome into the Toasted Tavern. I am Wags, joined alongside by Scott Tobin. We're here to bring you the night in sports, especially the focus on the Midwest. We've got plenty to talk about tonight. We've got college football. We've got NFL Week 2. We got Monday Night Football rolling right now. A very interesting game between a couple of 0-1 teams. And we've got some Major League Baseball playoff talk coming up first because the Cardinals are in Milwaukee. They are playing right now, bottom of the 8th, and they are trying to hold on to that second wild card spot that they somehow snatched from the Padres and Reds over here the last week. But before we get to that, Scott, how was your weekend, and how are you enjoying this beautiful fall weather here in St. Louis?
I'm doing good, man. It was a fun weekend. I was down at the ballpark all weekend, which was exciting. We'll talk about that here in a minute. And, yeah, I'm excited for the weather the rest of the week. It's going to get nice and cool starting tomorrow. So I'm looking forward to those highs in the 70s, lows in the 50s. It's starting to feel like fall, man. Leaves are starting to change, too, as I've noticed on some trees.
That is very true. It's high school football weather, and it is playoff baseball weather. And as Rodney says, yes, the Cardinals are looking good. 8 straight wins coming into tonight, 10 of their last 11 victorious. And they've been able to overtake the Reds and Padres for that second wild card spot, like I said earlier. And not only have they overtaken them, they've started to put some distance in between the two of them as well. Coming into tonight's game, they were 3 games up on the Reds, 3.5 up on the Padres. And we talked about this before we came on the air. This looks like a completely different team over not just the last week, but the last couple of weeks. And they're a team that's starting to hit very consistently. They're a team that's been pitching very, very well. The bullpen's doing what they need to do, and the defense has been spectacular. I mean, what was it that flipped the switch on this team?
I think they got completely healthy. You got healthy. You got confident. You brought in pitchers that could throw strikes. And we talk about the last couple of weeks them playing really well. You go back and look since the 1st of August, really, they've played really well. Unfortunately, they had a couple of games where their bullpen blew leads. You go back and you think about that series against Pittsburgh that they blew the 2 games. They should have swept that series. The last time they were in Milwaukee, the walk-off Vogelbach grand slam in that game. You take those 3 games away, and I mean, this team would be like 17-3 in their last 20 games. I mean, it's not just all of a sudden. It's been coming, and they're the team that we thought they were going to be. They're the team that we saw glimpses of at the end of April and the first part of May when they had the best record in baseball for a little while before Jack Flaherty got hurt. And, it's not just one guy like we talked about before we came on the air. You're seeing Tyler O'Neill become a star in front of our eyes. Harrison Bader's getting hot again. Yadi's starting to hit. And Dylan Carlson's really starting to come into his own. I mean, he's had a solid season. But the last couple of weeks, we're really seeing glimpses of the guy that everybody's talked so highly about in the minor leagues the last couple of years.
And speaking of Tyler O'Neill, he was named NL Player of the Week this week. He hit safely in all 6 games, drove in at least 1 run in 5 of those, hit 3 home runs, 2 of those coming in the 8th inning, which put the Cardinals in the lead, including Saturday's game against the Padres. A .391 average, 10 RBIs, 9 runs, and a 1308 OPS this past week for O'Neill. You talk about him becoming a star. He did that, and not only that, he became a clutch player as well because that game on Saturday looked to be, for all intents and purposes, a Padres win. It was Waino's day to pitch. It was the 2011 celebration. It was a tight game for a long time, but Tyler did what he's done the last couple of weeks, and that's just get a timely hit at the right time, and it put the Cardinals ahead for good.
It did. That was a weird game on Saturday. The home plate umpire had a rough night. He was calling he was definitely calling a weird strike zone. Both teams were a little unhappy with all of that. But like you said, in the big moment, Tyler O'Neill came back. And I'll tell you one thing, man. I was down there Saturday night, and the Busch Stadium was absolutely electric. It was all weekend. It started on Friday night. But Saturday and Sunday, I mean, from the very first pitch, that place felt like baseball was back. It felt like the Cardinals, felt like Busch Stadium that we're used to. And I heard somebody else say this today, and I totally agree with it. I think this weekend, for the very first time, Nolan Arenado got to feel what it's like to be a Cardinal playing at Busch Stadium and all those things that he'd heard about and seen as a Rocky. He finally got to experience himself this weekend.
I can see that being 100% the case. And honestly, he probably was the one who made that happen with the home run the week before. The one where he knocked the 2-run homer and just absolutely went crazy, knowing, hey, this is probably the start of something really, really good. And it's progressed. The sweep of the Mets, the sweep of the Padres, getting into that wild card spot. Now, I told somebody today, I'm like, I would not be shocked if we do not see anything less than a complete sellout the rest of this season and into the potential playoff games that we're going to see this year, because this team is winning and they're playing well, and fans, they want to see a winner, and that's not something we've seen for a while. And Wainwright had it right on the head on Saturday. He talked about the fact that this team knows they've been frustrating for fans this year, and yet they've been so appreciative of the Cardinals fans sticking with them. And now they're at a point where they can sit there and say, hey, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. Now come out and support us. And you talk about them being healthy. Well, they're not totally healthy yet. Jack Flaherty's still out. Dakota Hudson's still out. And we're about ready to potentially see both those guys come back as well.
Yeah. Dakota's going to throw another rehab assignment in Memphis, I guess, on Wednesday. And then, if everything goes well, then hopefully we'll see him next week. There's rumblings, there's rumors, there's a doubleheader on Friday in Chicago. There's at least some speculation that maybe, depending on how everything goes this week, Jack Flaherty may start that second game. I mean, he would basically be an opener and pitch an inning or two, maybe in a 7-inning game. But there is a real good shot that we may, if everything goes well this week, we may see Jack in Chicago. So that's exciting, hearing that you could see Jack and Dakota for that last week of the regular season, and hopefully, in a limited capacity, but hopefully for a playoff run.
And TJ McFarland just got through the 8th inning unscathed, induced a double play there from Jackie Bradley Jr. So the Cardinals head to the top of the 9th in Milwaukee with a 5-2 lead. Let's just say that we've been here before in Milwaukee with a lead right around this amount, and it didn't turn out well. So let's stay positive, but let's click off the game, Mike, and let's hope the Cardinals score a bunch of runs in the top of the ninth to put this game out of reach, because it is going to be tough. The last set of games is not easy. You've got 4, including tonight's in Milwaukee. You've got 4 in Chicago, including that doubleheader on Friday. Then you come back home for 3 against Milwaukee and 3 against Chicago to finish the season. So these are not cupcake games, even though the Cubs have sold off pretty much everybody. The Cubs always want to see this team go down in flames. They want to be the team that puts you out of the playoffs. They want to be the spoiler. And Milwaukee is in first place. They want to hang on to that forward momentum that they have and go into the playoffs on a high note. So it's not a given that the Cardinals are going to make the playoffs. Now, their magic number coming into tonight was 11 games. If they win tonight and the Reds are losing right now, the Reds continue to lose, that's a magic number of 9. So it does get you a little bit closer and a little bit closer. But the next 2 weeks are going to be tough.
They will. The one thing I will say, though, is, the Brewers' magic number is 3. So they're right on the verge of clinching. Hopefully that doesn't happen until next weekend. But if they clinch over the weekend, when they come into St. Louis next week, they're not going to have anything to play for. You may not see Peralta and Burns and their best pitchers. They may be resting guys. They may just be kind of getting ready to go into the playoffs because, they're not going to get the number 1 seed. That's going to go to either the Giants or the Dodgers. So once they get in, they don't really have anything to play for as far as that goes. So, we may get a little break there with seeing some different pitchers and maybe not their starting lineup as much. But, yeah, the Cubs are going to be tough, like you said. And, best thing for the Cardinals is just to have to play these games like this because, we talked about it going into it, man. The Cardinals are the team with the real disadvantage because of their schedule. They got to play all these teams, and look what the Reds have, look what the Mets have. And, it's been a gauntlet for the Cardinals, and they've taken advantage of it. The Reds have lost 8 series in a row now. Remember when everybody said, oh, man, there's no way the Cardinals can catch the Reds. No way the Cardinals can catch the Reds. Well, yeah, the Reds are sinking fast, and if the Reds are sinking fast, the Padres are the Titanic. I mean, that thing's breaking in half, and people are jumping overboard. And the only teams they've got left are the Dodgers and the Giants. So if you think the Cardinals have it rough, the Padres really have it rough.
That they do. I want to touch on something about Milwaukee here in just a second, but I want to stay on this Padres train for a second because there was video that came out after the Saturday night game of Fernando Tatis and Manny Machado just absolutely going at it in the dugout. And Machado was trying to be the leader that this team needs, in a sense, by really trying to call Fernando Tatis Jr. out and saying, hey, dude, this is more than just about you. and Tatis was seemingly having nothing to do with it. There are divisions in that clubhouse in San Diego, and it's really going to be real interesting to see how that plays out, not just the rest of this year and into the playoffs potentially, which may or may not happen, but what happens in the offseason as well. Because Fernando Tatis is a guy that's been injured. They've been talking about moving him to the outfield. Machado's been okay, not great for this team, but he has been a bit of a leader. I mean, are there potentially any moves that this team may make? Because they're not where they want to be.
No, they're not. And guys get mad at each other and scream and yell at each other in dugouts. It happens all the time. That just happened to get caught by social media. I don't think, I wouldn't take anything out of it because we know that those two guys are actually pretty close. The fact that Manny Machado is telling somebody else it's not all about you is just way too funny to me, though. We're talking about a guy who, when he was in LA, wasn't running out plays and was getting chewed out by his teammates and said, he didn't have to hustle. He wasn't a hustle guy. He did it his way. So for him to try to take that leadership role now is kind of funny to me. But, and we have heard that there's not a whole lot of leadership in that team because there are a lot of young guys, a lot of guys that are, it's not like Tommy Pham's exactly going to step up and be a leader. So we'll see what happens. You have to feel bad for them. I mean, they've gone all in, and to spend all the money and make all the moves they have to get the pitching that they went out and got, and then go into that series with the Cardinals and have Vince Velasquez, pitching one of those games, and then Jake Arrieta pitching another. I mean, if you're a Padres fan, you just have to feel like you're snake bit at this point.
You do, because they did. They spent a ton of money on pitching, and they got big names, and yet none of it progressed where they wanted to. I mean, Arrieta only won a couple of innings. Maybe it didn't even just go in an inning.
A third of an inning.
So, I mean, you get that, and then you have a tax bullpen going out there. And it's just, as a Padres fan, you have to feel terrible about this because you have a young team that has a good offensive capabilities. The pitching staff just isn't there to back it up. And you don't want to waste the years that you have with some of these players, because if you do finally get a chance to having a rotation that's strong, you may not have these guys in their primes anymore. And that's something the Cardinals have been lucky enough to have, that they've been having, good pitching staffs and guys in their prime kind of all coalesce at the same time. Whereas the Padres, it just seems like, man, one time it's the pitching that's great and the offense is terrible. Then the other time it's flipped. It's a tough time being a Padres fan, even though they can be good.
Well, just think about the pitching they've gone and gotten in the last 2 years. I mean, think about last year. They go out and they get Mike Clevinger. You thought Lamet was going to come back and be healthy this year. Then Clevinger ends up getting hurt, misses the playoffs last year. Lamet wasn't really able to pitch in the playoffs last year. Clevinger misses all of this year. So you go out and get, Snell, and you go out and get Darvish. Darvish hasn't been good. Snell's hurt. Clevinger's still hurt. Lamet can't pitch in the rotation because he can't stay healthy. So you have Chris Paddock's been hurt a couple of times. So you've got all this pitching that you went and got, and none of them have been what they were supposed to be. What happened to Joe Musgrove? Remember when everybody thought—
I was just about to say that.
He threw that no-hitter, and people that we know thought he was the next big thing and going to be a superstar. I haven't heard his name since then.
That's exactly who I was thinking of as you were talking about. Like, what happened to Joe Musgrove? Wasn't he supposed to be like a dark horse Cy Young guy? Wasn't he threw a no-hitter? I mean, what happened? Now, granted, we see a lot of those guys that throw no-hitters kind of fade off into the background pretty quickly unless they're a star player. But yeah, they haven't been able to develop much, if anything at all. So, it's for the Cardinals, it's lucky. Lucky that this team has kind of fallen apart a little bit. Same thing with the Reds. But the Cardinals have also done enough the last couple of weeks to really put themselves in this position. And I want to go back to what you were talking about with Milwaukee. They may clinch over the weekend and they may not have to, put out their stars or anything like that, but that may not be to the Cardinals' advantage, because we've seen this Cardinals team over the past few years, over the past decade, struggle against guys that they've never seen. Young pitchers, soft tossers, lefties, what have you. They've had success against Freddie Peralta. They're getting ready to go 3-0 against him over the last 3 starts. If the Cardinals are in a position to win a couple games against Milwaukee next week, I would much rather see the regular guys than risk going up against a guy I've never seen, because this team, for some reason, seems to struggle against guys they've never seen before.
Yeah, that's a good point. Although, in September, the Cardinals in September are a different ball club.
Yes, they are.
They have been for like the last 15 years. You get into September and this team flips a switch. They did it with Tony and Mike Matheny, not so much able to do that, but Mike Schultz been able to find that magic that Tony had. You get in that stretch run and there's just another gear that this team finds. And I talked about the Brewers not using those. I think they'll still probably pitch. But I think because you want to keep them sharp, but I think you'll probably only see them pitch a couple of innings just to try to stay in rhythm and get ready for the playoffs. What's going to suck is the Cardinals. You look at the National League playoffs, and the Cardinals are going to play the Dodgers or the Giants in that wild card. So one of those teams that has the better record is going to get knocked out, and whoever wins the East is going to have the worst record in the National League that makes the playoff team, and they're guaranteed a 5-game series.
That's insane. I mean, I understand it, but yeah, it totally does not make sense. I mean, a lot of these leagues, NHL included, went to this divisional-based playoff format, and, good teams are going to be knocked out before the first round's even over with. But I just don't know if they can go back to the conference or league standings because I think we're too far down that divisional pathway to really go back. I'd love to see it because it would give the best teams a potential chance of winning. But then again, if you're a team like the Reds or something like that, where maybe the wild card is your best bets and 6 teams are ahead of you that are better in the East and in the West, it does eliminate part of your viewership. So I get both arguments of both sides. I like to see the best of the best get in, but sometimes it just doesn't work out that way.
Well, and next year will be different again because next year we'll see the playoffs like we saw last year, where even every series will be 3 games in that first round. Which will make it a little bit more interesting, and not more interesting, but it'll make it a little bit more fair when you have, like I said, you're going to have a Dodger or a Giant team possibly win over 100 games and then get knocked out in a 1-game playoff when the Cardinals beat them. So. And here's an interesting question, and you can look at it both ways. I'm going to ask you, 1-game series, would you rather play, not just in the 1 game, but do you have a better chance of beating the Dodgers in a 1-game series and then playing the Giants in a best-of-5, or a better chance of beating the Giants in a 1-game series and playing the Dodgers in a best-of-5?
Oh, that is a tough one because I don't want to play a long series in San Francisco. I just, for some reason, I don't like playing at their ballpark. I feel like it's the Cardinals are at a detriment to that. Now granted, they've got a speedier outfield than they've ever had, which means, they would definitely defensively play better. Oh my gosh. Honestly, I think I'd probably play the Giants in the wild card and take my chances with the Dodgers in a 5-game series.
I think I keep going back and forth. I think when you look at recent playoff history, the Cardinals have not had the best of luck playing the Giants. When you go back to, you look at 2002, and then you look at 2011 or 2012, and then you look at 2013. So they haven't had or 2014. It was I'm trying to think. Yeah, it was 12 and 14 that the Giants knocked them out in the NLCS because they went to the World Series in 11 and 13. So yeah, and the Dodgers, we've had their number. In the postseason, going back to the 80s. The only thing that you look at there is, man, you go into a 5-game series against the Dodgers, and you're going to get, although you will get Clayton Kershaw at least once, maybe twice, but more than likely it'll be Scherzer and Buehler twice and Kershaw once. So, definitely the pitching matchups, when you look at it, the Giants would be, because they've got Kevin Gausman, and then it's kind of everybody else with the Giants. And the Cardinals, although you look at their records, the Cardinals were one of the few teams to have a winning record against the Giants this year, but then you're also just a game under 500 against the Dodgers. So they've played them both pretty well. So I think I'm gonna go with you, though. I think I'm gonna go. I'd rather play the Giants in the 1 game and the Dodgers in the 5, just because of the history with the Giants and the struggles that they've had in San Francisco. We've got some bad postseason memories out there. Travis Ishikawa's name keeps popping up in my mind.
Well, I mean, I still go back to the series where I think it had to have been 0-2 when the Giants ended up going to the World Series, that series was a series the Cardinals should have won. I mean, that was the celebration of Kyle and Buck that year. That, both of them passing. You thought that was a bit of a magical ride that they were going on, and then they got to face Barry Bonds and the Giants, and we all just hate that for many reasons right there. So yeah, the success and the history against the Giants is fleeting, whereas the Dodgers, it's been there. We've shown that we can beat the best when the best throw their best at us. Although now that, as we were talking through it, I'm just sitting there going, maybe our number against the Dodgers is up. Maybe we need to make sure that we only see them once and then go take our chances with San Francisco. So I could go either way. I mean, I'm not going to be disappointed if it's Dodgers for 1, Giants for 5, or Giants for 1, Dodgers for 5. I mean, I feel like the Cardinals will try their best to match up against both those teams no matter what. I would probably go with Giants 1, Dodgers 5, just like you said, because of the history. Although if it's the flip side, I look forward to that series for the reasons that you said. The Cardinals going up against that pitching staff could be better for them.
Right. And you go back to 0-2, and the thing that everybody forgets, the Cardinals went into that series in 0-2 a little underwhelmed, undermanned is the word I was trying to come up with, because everybody forgets the last game against Arizona that they won to advance to that series. A stupid base runner decided to run into Scott Rowland's shoulder, which, kind of, even though Scotty had some great years after that shoulder injury, he was never quite the same.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course he had the second injury, in 05 that knocked him out of that year. And then he really was never the same after that, even though he's played for a long time. His power was pretty much gone after that second shoulder surgery. But if Rowland's there in 0-2 for that Giants series, I think the Cardinals win that series. I think it makes all the difference in the world.
I think you're 100% right. Like I said, the Cardinals are in the bottom of the ninth right now, 5-2 lead. 1 out. You've got Garcia on the mound for the Cardinals, looking to bounce back after giving up a run yesterday for the first time in gosh knows how long. I think it was sometime in June, that Cubs series. So Garcia is in right now to try to close this out, facing Adames right now with Escobar on deck. All right, let's jump over to college football real quick, because there are a lot of really interesting games on Saturday and a lot of close games. Maybe that shouldn't have been so close, but I want to start off right up at the top, because we thought Alabama was just going to steamroll through to the national championship game. They were probably the national championship favorites coming into this season. And the first couple weeks, nothing was done to dispel that feeling. Then on Saturday, they face off against number 11 Florida. And they jump out to a 2-touchdown lead, playing very, very well. And then all of a sudden, the Bama offense just kind of stalls a little bit. And Florida just starts chipping away. And before you know it, it's a 31-29 game. And Alabama does hang on to win this game. But did Florida expose Alabama in as far as defensively or even offensively? Or is it just a matter of Florida matching up well against Alabama and it's a hard-fought SEC game?
It was a good game. I mean, there's still some questions about Alabama's offense. But, it's Nick Saban. They still found a way to win, and they'll probably win next week by 50 or something. Saban will find a way to fix it. I think they're still the clear-cut favorite. The top 4 is interesting, though, now, if you look at it, because it's Alabama, Georgia, Oklahoma, and Oregon in that top 4. Clemson's all the way down to 9, which is the lowest they've been since, 2013, and Ohio State's 10th. So maybe we are going to see some different teams in the playoffs this year, and I picked Oregon to make it to make it in there a couple of weeks ago. Oklahoma, I don't have a whole lot of faith in, because they've barely won a couple of games. They haven't exactly blown people away. So I'm not sure they're going to hang around in that top 4. But it's definitely nice to see some different teams in there.
It really is. And, yeah, Oklahoma barely beat Nebraska 23-16. And we talked about this a little bit a couple weeks ago about this season kind of having that same sort of feeling that year Mizzou ended up at number 1 for about a week, and then they lost to Oklahoma and all that crap. This season kind of has that feel to it as well, where you're going to see a lot of rotation essentially in the top 10. Like you said, Georgia is up there, and looking at it, obviously they're going to have to play Alabama at least once, maybe twice this year. I don't know. Georgia almost looks like they might be a slightly better team than Alabama. Now, granted, it is still early, and it's not like either team has played super tough competition outside of the game against Florida this past weekend with Alabama, but Georgia could be the best team in the SEC at the end of the season if they play to their level.
Yeah, it seems like we say that every year about Georgia, though, and then there's a game or two where they just don't show up, and they end up losing games they shouldn't lose. So I'm not 100% sold on the Bulldogs yet. We'll see how that plays out. I think like I said, I think Alabama will win the SEC. I think Alabama is going to be of those four teams, the two that I feel the most confident in being there at the end are Alabama and Oregon, because I think Oregon's going to win the Pac-12, and I think Bama's going to win, and I think those two teams I feel pretty good about. A team that could be sneaky because they don't play a real tough schedule, and they're ranked. A team like Cincinnati is a team that could shock some people and slide in there. Although, because of their schedule, because of who they play, will the committee let them get in there is a question. If they're undefeated with the schedule they play, and a team like Oklahoma loses or Ohio State loses one game in their conference, do they still get the nod even though Cincinnati's undefeated is the question. So we'll see. It's going to be interesting. The Big Ten is really good. The Pac-12 is a lot better than anybody thought it was going to be. So it's going to be fun as we get into these conference games and see if teams beat up on each other.
Well, we're already starting to see that a little bit because, Fresno State took down number 13 UCLA. BYU took down number 19 Arizona State. So we're seeing a lot of parity out like in the Pac-12. Does any of that hurt a team like Oregon's chances at a national championships? Because if you have a bunch of teams that are, ranked and then they get beat by unranked teams and then they jump into the rankings and then they get beat by an unranked team, does that hurt the chances of an Oregon for a national championship? Or because everybody is kind of at that same level and playing well against each other, does that elevate their chances?
Yeah, it could elevate. If you end up with 3 or 4 teams in your conference in the top 25 and they've all got 1 or 2 losses, that will help Oregon because it says, okay, the Pac-12 is back to being a more consistent, more deep conference.
And you talked about Cincinnati. They took out Indiana 38-24 this past week. Do you think they could be the real deal? I mean, I know you had some question marks about them coming into the season and even after the first couple weeks. And like you said, with their schedule, there's no real sexy win that they can have out there unless a team just absolutely goes on a run and possibly gets ranked. But could you see them being a real deal type of team when we get down to the end of the year?
Again, it's going to be tough. It's going to come down to, how other teams stack up because we've seen it. The committee wants the Power 5 in there. So unless a couple of those teams have a couple of losses, I don't really see Cincinnati being able to slide in there because they'll slide somebody else in there bigger because they think the TV ratings will be better and stuff like that. And real quickly, remember when we talked week 1 about how you were excited about Indiana? And I'm sorry if you're watching Mr. Ackerman because I know Tom was at Indiana last week.
Yeah.
The Hoosiers not looking so tough.
Oh, that's a tough one to swallow right there because I thought they had a chance at being somewhat of a surprise team. And then you throw in the fact that Ackerman is a person that is a fan and traveled out there to watch a game. You don't want to see one of your idols have a run of bad luck at all. And unfortunately, that's what's going on in Indiana. I'm sure everybody's waiting for basketball season to arrive at Indiana for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. And that's the big one in Indiana. Hoosiers hit the hardwood. They get really excited out there.
Oh yeah. Now, one other team we got to talk about, but more so it's to see if we can stop talking about them. And it's a team that everybody talks about every year about. Oh, they're going to get into the CFP. They're going to be great. It's Notre Dame. Notre Dame 27-13 win over Purdue. They're sitting near the top 10 right now. But can we just stop talking about the Fighting Irish qualifying for the college football playoff? They're not a good team. They're a middling team. They're a decent team, but they're not a college football playoff level team, and they're never going to be.
Oh, they will be, and I guarantee you, if if they have the same record as Cincinnati does and they have to make a pick, Notre Dame is the one getting in the playoffs.
Yeah, I know.
They do have talent. They're not bad. Yeah, if you're not a Notre Dame fan, you hate them. It's just like, it's just one of those things. They're one of those teams that are always there. It's the Patriots. It's the Lakers. It's the Bulls. It's the Celtics when they were in their prime, when they made those runs. If you weren't a fan, you hated them, and it's just the way it is. But Notre Dame's always going to get that little nod, that little advantage because they are Notre Dame.
And see, it's not like I necessarily hate Notre Dame. Like I love the helmets. I love the uniform. I love the pageantry. I love the stadium that they play in. I love the rabid fans and just how much they support them. I think for me, it just comes down to the fact of they have that air of we're so much better than everybody else that we don't have to play in a conference, that no matter who we schedule, we feel like our schedule deserves to be the one that is the best strength of schedule, so should automatically put us into the college football playoff conversation. I think that's what it is. I think it's that haughtiness that we are so much better than everybody else, no matter how good or bad we are, that we should always be considered for stuff. I think that's the piece that I don't like. I don't hate Notre Dame as a whole. I just hate that little piece right there, and that's the thing that drives me nuts.
And it's funny because all their other programs are in a conference. They're in the ACC and everything except football. But the reason they do that is so that they can keep those longtime rivalries, that they can still play USC every year, that they can still play Navy every year, that they can still play those teams that they've played for 100 years now, basically, and they don't take that away from them. So, yeah, it is. And I'll tell you what, man, being at Notre Dame, sitting out there, 75,000 people in South Bend, with football Jesus looking over you, it's pretty cool. I will say that. I got to give it to them. They do it well in South Bend.
Oh, yeah. I definitely want to go to a game there. No question whatsoever. Because, Rudy is a great movie, and it's an inspiring movie. And I got to go see a game there at Notre Dame. So, just another very interesting week in college football. We got another one of those coming up as well. Hopefully we'll be able to preview that for you on Saturday morning. But let's move to the big time, because NFL Week 2 almost over, and a game at the half was not looking so good for Green Bay. It's turned into kind of a laugher at this point. We'll talk about that here in just a second as that game wraps up. Real quickly, the Cardinals did beat the Brewers 5-2. So another win. That's 9 straight, and we did not jinx it because Scott almost did that before the show. He almost did it.
Nope.
But they did win. 5-2 is the final. We'll wait to see if the Reds game goes final as well, and can update you on the standings in the wild card. As it is, the Reds actually now lead 7-5 over the Pirates. So right now, as it stands, the Cardinals will probably remain just 3 games ahead of the Reds in that second wild card, and the Padres do not play tonight. So that'll just basically stay at 3 right there for them. All right, NFL. Another set of really good games as well, and another set of injuries that have gone down to quarterbacks and other star players out there. We'll start up at the top. You had the Bears and Bengals. Andy Dalton goes down with a knee injury. Thankfully, it's not an ACL injury. I don't know if Bears fans are happy about that or not, because I think they all want to see Justin Fields take over the daily duties as the quarterback, although I think he still probably needs to sit for just a little bit longer so he doesn't get destroyed. Regardless of all that, Justin Fields leads the Bears to a 20-17 victory over the Bengals. Joe Burrow, 3 interceptions in that game. What were your expectations and thoughts on that Bears-Bengals game?
Yeah, I had Cincinnati winning, so I was a little bit disappointed in that. Burrow did play better in the second half, got into kind of a rhythm. Justin Fields is not ready to play, and you look at the Bears pages on social media now, most of the Bears fans are saying the same thing, that he's not ready to be out there. It'll be interesting to see what they do next week if Andy Dalton isn't able to play. But, none of the young quarterbacks looked real good this week.
No, they really didn't. He had Zach Wilson throwing 4 interceptions in the Patriots' 25-6 victory over the Jets. The Patriots, Mac Jones looked okay. He did enough to win that game and kind of make himself the winner of the rookie quarterbacks in week 2. I just think, though, the Patriots are back to kind of what they did in the early Tom Brady days, where limiting mistakes, using the run game to their advantage, and that defense is smothering. So are we on the verge of not necessarily seeing another dynasty, but are we getting set up to see another Patriots run here in the next couple of years?
Well, let's not forget who they've played in the first 2 weeks. They played the Dolphins and the Jets. So let's not get too excited about what they've done so far. And like you said, Wilson, if he actually has to lead the team and make plays, I'm not sure that's going to happen. He's been okay. He really hasn't done a whole lot. I think he threw for 180 yards this week. So we'll see what happens when they actually play some real competition.
Yeah, it's the Jets and the Dolphins, okay? Dolphins got blown out 35-0 by the Bills, who bounced back after that loss to Pittsburgh last week. Tua did leave the game with a rib injury. He's considered day-to-day. Once again, another big name going down due to injury, a guy that has suffered injuries the last couple of years as well. Are the Bills sitting there, or I'm sorry, the Dolphins, are they sitting there kicking themselves for not making that move to bring in Deshaun Watson, even though he is not playing in Houston?
I don't know if they're kicking themselves because of the asking price that the Texans had. So we'll see what happens. I'm sure they're not happy with the way they're playing right now, but although they are 1-1. But we'll see what happens. We'll see if Tua is able to play next week or where the Dolphins go.
Yeah, a rib injury, not something you really want to mess with when it comes to quarterback, especially one that's getting harassed as much as Tua is. So maybe they let him sit for 1 week to get healthy. Speaking of the Texans, Tyrod Taylor left the game with a hamstring injury. He was leading the Texans to a really, really good game against Cleveland. I think you might have been sweating bullets there around the half when that game was close. But he did leave with a hamstring injury, and that's kind of when the Browns took over. Baker Mayfield also sustained an injury to his shoulder. Had to have it pop back in, but he didn't miss a snap. And Jarvis Landry goes down with an MCL injury on the second play of the game. So injuries left and right in that game. But the Browns do hold on for a 31-21 victory. Were there any points of concern for you as a Browns fan that the Texans scored 21 and kept that game close for a while?
Yeah, definitely not what you wanted to see, but Cleveland ended up winning by 10. The Jarvis Landry injury is a little bit upsetting, because he's kind of the leader of that wide receiving core. So, it's possible he could be out up to 6 weeks. We don't know the extent of that injury yet, so we'll see. Although it did come out about an hour ago that it looks like ODB will be back, Odell Beckham, OBJ. Old dirty bastards playing football now. OBJ, Odell Beckham Jr. looks like he will return to the field more than likely on Sunday. Really interesting thing in Houston, Tyrod Taylor hurt. Their young rookie quarterback came in, didn't play great. Lots of talk that Tyrod Taylor may be out for a little bit. Very possible, very, very possible that the backup quarterback going into next week for the Houston Texans on their roster and probably playing by halftime is the one and only Deshaun Watson.
That's going to be real interesting to see how that plays out, because they've been holding him out for non-football related reasons because of the investigation going on around him. And what kind of look does that give the Texans if they do, in fact, make that decision? Because I know that there's going to be people that are going to basically blast the Texans saying, hey, look, when you had a starting quarterback, you did the right thing by holding him out until this investigation was completed. All of a sudden, you lose your starting quarterback, and you're going to put him back in to play. I know that there are going to be a lot of people that are going to be upset about that, because they feel like that the Texans have done the right thing by withholding him from playing until some form of an investigation is completed. But on the flip side, you have to look at it and go, hey, look, this is still a business, and until proven guilty, you're innocent. So why are you holding it against him, especially if the NFL hasn't done any sort of suspension as well? So it's going to be a very interesting situation to see what happens in Houston if Taylor is unable to go for the next couple of weeks.
Well, and I understand people saying, maybe you shouldn't play him, but there's no charges. There's no charges against him. There's no criminal charges. Is there even an investigation going on at this point? We've never heard the police really doing anything. I have no idea. So, it's not like there have been charges filed, that there's criminal charges pending, that we know what's going on. I mean, the police have pretty much been silent in this whole thing. We've never really heard anything from them as far as what's going on in this. So, in a lot of ways, I say, let him play. I mean, if Frank Clark's able to play for the Chiefs last night, and he was, then Deshaun Watson, with no charges pending for anything, should be able to play as well until you actually have something against him.
And it's interesting, though, because you look at the Trevor Bauer situation in Major League Baseball, and he's basically not pitched the entire season now because of allegations against him. Now, granted, it's a little bit different. There are more pieces to the puzzle, per se, as far as what's known about what happened, where in the Deshaun Watson case, there's really not much, like you said, that has come out. I mean, there's been some names, there's been some stuff said, but nothing real concrete has been shown yet. So until there's that, and once again, you don't want to put on the back burner anything involving what's gone on, sexual abuse or anything like that. There's no reason why that needs to be put on the back burner. It still needs to be investigated and really made the first priority. But like you said, nothing has been mentioned about this. No police information. I mean, honestly, not even lawyers on either side have really said anything. So at what point do you step back and say, okay, either let's figure this out or we've got to move on and let this guy play until something comes about? And if that happens and he gets suspended by the league or charges are filed, then yeah, you need to yank him right away. It needs to just be a quick, hey, look, this has happened. You need to go again. So it's a really tricky situation, and it is going to be very interesting to see how Houston handles that.
Yeah. Real quick. The Trevor Bauer thing, while it's similar, there's a lot of differences there, though, because Bauer admitted to it, admitted to the physical abuse. I mean, Deshaun, there's no actual allegations of sexual abuse. There's rumors that maybe he has exposed himself. Maybe he asked somebody to do something they weren't comfortable with, but we've never actually heard that he actually did anything as far as sexually abusing anybody. Whereas Trevor Bauer, I mean, he choked people to death, and they have pictures of his fingerprints around people's necks, choked them until they were unconscious. So while there are some similarities, the Trevor Bauer thing way worse, and as far as what we know right now.
Yeah, and Deshaun Watson has denied the allegations against him as well, where, as you said, Trevor Bauer has readily admitted, yes, this is what has gone down because I was told that this is what they wanted.
Yeah,
and
said it was consensual.
They're both situations are, I'll just put it this way, I'm glad I'm not a lawyer, and I'm glad I'm not a team owner or team leadership right now, because I would not want to be the one that has to deal with either of those situations right now. Rams and Colts, another guy goes down with injury, Carson Wentz. He has two sprained ankles. He sprained his left ankle early in the game, then he had his right ankle injured in a scramble late in the game. Right now, Colts are unsure if he's going to even play next week. The Rams, a 27-24 victory in that one. Obviously, Wentz dealt with the surgery in the offseason, really the last, during the preseason, and then had the COVID potential contact as well before, and he got into week one, but he hasn't had a ton of practice. I just don't even know where to go with this one, because Carson Wentz is just a walking injury, and the Colts paid a ton to get him in there, and right now they're just not winning.
Yeah, although Wentz has played really well in both games. Them losing definitely not Carson Wentz's fault, because he's played really, really well. And they've run up to just some tough opponents. But, yeah, it's going to be hard for them if he's out for any extended amount of time.
It is, because then they're going to have to go to Jacoby Brissett. And while he's had success with the Colts and with the Patriots before that, maybe long-term is not the way the Colts want to go with that one. All right, I think the biggest surprise on Sunday was in Pittsburgh with the Las Vegas Raiders beating the Steelers 26-17. And I say a surprise because, yeah, the Raiders were 1-0 going into this game. They had a crazy Monday night game against Baltimore. I don't think it was a surprise that people didn't think the Raiders were good. I just think it was a surprise about how they kind of went about winning this game. I mean, Derek Carr, 382, 2 touchdowns. The Steelers defense not that great. The offensive line still having issues. They haven't really been able to get much of a running game going on. They couldn't finish a drive to save their life. Are the Raiders the most surprising team so far this year?
Yeah, and people need to start giving Derek Carr a lot of credit. Derek Carr, 840 yards passing in 2 weeks. The Raiders' offense is good. And they did it without Josh Jacobs. Jacobs was not in that game yesterday. So, yeah, I think you have to look at the Raiders and say, okay, they're better than we thought they were. They've got a really good tight end in Waller, who may be the second best tight end in football behind Travis Kelce. Ruggs is starting to play really well. They've got a couple of other young wide receivers stepping up. So the Raiders could be a scary team. The Steelers, injuries, TJ Watt got hurt in the first half of that game. And then, like you said, their offensive line just wasn't good. They've got a bunch of young guys on that offensive line. They're trying to figure it out. But Ben was getting hit all over the place. I mean, there were 2 or 3 times that he was throwing the ball with 2 or 3 defenders hanging on him. Normal quarterbacks would have been on the ground. But when you're 260 pounds at quarterback, you can withstand that and still get a throw off. But, the Steelers are kind of Jekyll and Hyde at this point. They played really well in the second half in Buffalo. And then, their offense has struggled other than that. So we'll see what happens with the Steelers going forward.
And you talk about Josh Jacobs not being involved. I mean, Waller only had, I believe, 1 target in the first half as well. So they played well in the first half without their best rusher and only targeting their top, I guess, threat in a sense, like 1 time in the entire half. So that just right there shows you the depth that Vegas has. And if you're Kansas City, you have to be worried because the Raiders always play you tough. And it feels like every year the Raiders get a victory against Kansas City. With the way Kansas City's been playing early on in the season, defensive struggles and, falling behind early in some instances and having to come back, this could be the year where maybe it is Vegas that ends up winning the AFC West. And I think people would be surprised by that. I don't know if it's necessarily going to happen because I think Kansas City will put everything together. And Tyrann Mathieu came back this week. He missed last week. So you got to get him integrated back into the defense. And once he's there, it kind of settles a lot of stuff down. And then you've got that pass rush with Frank Clark up there that we'll get to some quarterbacks. But, it would not surprise me if Vegas is that second team, maybe the team pushing Kansas City for that top spot in the West.
Don't count out Denver either. Denver's pretty good. Teddy Bridgewater's played better than people expected. That defense is really, really good in Denver. So Denver's going to be tough too. And you have the Chargers, so it's not going to be a cakewalk for Kansas City. Since you brought them up real quick, we'll just talk about the Chiefs real quick. If you watch the end of that Chiefs game, if that wasn't a carbon copy, what happened to the Chiefs is a carbon copy of what happened to the Browns in Kansas City last week. Chiefs have a big lead in the fourth quarter on the road against a tough team. Patrick Mahomes tries to throw a pass with 2 defenders hanging on him, just throws it up in the air. It gets picked off. That leads to points. And then they have their running back fumbles. And that leads, as you're going down, the Chiefs were driving down, should have won that game. They're getting in field goal range, much like the Browns were a week before when Baker threw the interception. So both teams, turnovers by your quarterback and your running back in the fourth quarter when you've got a big lead on the road against a tough opponent. And, the Chiefs, by all accounts, should have won that game. You got to give the Ravens credit, though. Their running game, Kansas City's defense cannot stop the run at all. And you got to give John Harbaugh, I don't know why I wanted to say Jim there, John Harbaugh a ton of credit. 4th and 1, you get with a minute left in that game, you give the ball back to Mahomes, the Chiefs probably win. He doesn't. He gives it to his quarterback, and he runs up the middle, picks up a couple yards, and wins the game. And you got to give Lamar Jackson credit because apparently John Harbaugh asked him, hey, you want the ball here? You want to do this? And he said, oh, hell yeah, I do. And so for Lamar Jackson, that was huge because he even talked about the Chiefs being his kryptonite this week. And so for him to get over that hurdle and to finally beat Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, that's huge for the Ravens. In Baltimore, we talked about their running backs not having any. They ran for 195 yards against the Chiefs last night.
That's the most amazing part, and that's with the running back situation that they've had. The fact that they rushed all over the Chiefs just tells you how bad that Chiefs rushing defense is. And I was going to bring up that exact point about Harbaugh asking Lamar if he wanted to go for it. I mean, there's that clip out there. He's just like, Lamar, you want to go for it? Go for it. I mean, that right there is a head coach quarterback, relationship that they don't have in Green Bay right now. That's what you want. You want your head coach and your QB to be on that same page and have that trust between the two of them that, hey, I'm going to ask you if you want to go for it. And if you say yes, we're going for it because I trust you. And Baltimore may not win as many games as people want them to this year because of the injuries, but they're going to have a trust level that next year when everybody's healthy, you better watch out for Baltimore again.
Yeah, and Lamar Jackson played a really good game.
He did.
He made a couple of really nice throws. He did his best Patrick Mahomes impersonation with the jump pass touchdown that he threw to Hollywood Brown. So, I mean, the Ravens are still going to be scary. They're going to win some games. That division is going to be really interesting. We talked about it being the best in football, and now everybody's 1-1. So we will see. But, they're going to beat each other up. And like you said, maybe nobody in that division has as many wins as you thought because they may all just beat each other up.
That is very, very true. Okay, a couple other surprising teams. The Panthers, 26-7 victory over the Saints. Jameis Winston struggles against that Panther defense after throwing 5 touchdowns the week before. Sam Darnold, 2-0, playing well for the Panthers. Zach Wilson's probably sitting there going, man, when can I get out of New York and actually be good again?
Right.
Because Sam Darnold has looked very good with the Panthers. I mean, it helps having Christian McCaffrey. It helps having an offensive line that can protect you. And it helps having the ability to throw to guys that will catch the ball. So Panthers a big win there. We talked about the Broncos winning big over Jacksonville. And how about the Cardinals surviving Minnesota? Because guess what? A Minnesota kicker missed a field goal. I mean, what is up with kicking in Minnesota?
Yeah, they've had some problems with that for a long, long time. Got to give Arizona credit. Their defense did not play nearly as well this week. Kyler Murray made plays when he had to, and Arizona's 2-0, and that NFC West is going to be tough. A team that, we had questions about their defense. Seattle, big lead. Somebody in Tennessee finally realized in the second half of that game, hey, wait a minute, we've got this running back that's pretty good. We haven't hardly used him. He had 30 rushes combined going into the third quarter so far this season, Derrick Henry. They just hadn't been giving him the ball. And then all of a sudden you're like, hey, let's give this guy the ball. 22 carries in the third quarter, 165 yards, 3 touchdowns. Pretty good decision. 185 yards overall for Henry on the day. But, Tennessee, it looked like they were going to go 0-2. Seattle had a huge lead. And what does that say about the Seahawks? That's not Seahawk-like to have a lead like that in Seattle and blow it. But it goes back to, again, that Seattle defense has a lot of questions.
Oh, very much so. I mean, we didn't think they were going to be back to that Legion of Boom type of defense. We felt like, with Jamal Adams back there, maybe it solidifies a couple of things and moves some people around and they'd be good. But yeah, they have struggled so far, and I still think they're just trying to find themselves, and they'll probably get stronger as the year goes on. They'll take advantage of playing at home. The 12th man will help prop them up a little bit as well. I think that's the big thing, is that it was a home game that they lost. It wasn't like they were in Tennessee; they were in Seattle, and the crowd and the defense could not get hyped up enough to stop that Tennessee rushing attack. But like you said, having Derrick Henry have 30 carries combined going into the third quarter, basically a game and a half, it takes 30 carries in a game to get him going and get teams worn down. So the fact that they threw him out there for 22 rushes over the last couple of quarters there, it shows you right there what you have to do in order to get Derrick Henry rolling. And yeah, I mean, if you're trailing, it's harder to go to the run game, but if it's a close game, you're within striking distance, you cannot move away from that, because he is eventually going to wear down a defense and they are going to break. And you're going to see exactly what happened in Seattle happen time and time again with Derrick Henry.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they were down 25-11. You got to give Tennessee credit for not saying, okay, we're just completely abandoning the run here and we're just going to keep trying to throw. Hopefully they keep doing that the rest of the season. The other game I want to talk about real quick, the LA Chargers had 2 opponents on Sunday. They played the Dallas Cowboys and the refs, and the refs won. I don't know. They had a touchdown taken away in the end zone, and then the most ridiculous call that I've ever seen. I don't know if you saw it in the fourth quarter. They're going in for a touchdown, and Justin Herbert, he dropped back. He had pressure in his face. He had two guys on him, but he's still falling back, still getting ready to throw the ball, and somehow they call it a sack in the grass, 15 yards, a 15-yard loss. I mean, the guy was still – he wasn't getting hit. His momentum wasn't stopped. He was still in the act of playing, and somehow the refs make that call, which is huge in the game. And then, like I said, of course, they had a touchdown taken away in the end zone on top of that. Just a horrible job by the refs. And, the Cowboys definitely got aided with that win.
Yeah, Jim Nantz and Tony Romo were both agreeing that the fact that it was a terrible call. I mean, they were like, how is that a call? That's the wrong call. He was not in the process. I mean, he was in the process of being brought down, but he still had the wherewithal that he was still trying to make a play. And that's exactly what Romo was saying. It was, he's still trying to make a play in this instance. So how do you call that a sack in the grass if he's still trying to make a play and still has the ability to make a play? And, you talk about that. I mean, you got to remember, guess what they were playing? They were playing in Los Angeles. Guess who was in the building? Oh, Mr. Jerry Jones, the guy who helped facilitate the move to Los Angeles. So you really think he was going to let his team go into LA, into the building he built, essentially, and have his team lose? Hell no. He paid off those referees, no question. You heard it here first. Jerry Jones continues to pay off the refs.
Well, and Stan probably did too. Stan probably, hey, this is my building. I don't want the Chargers having a better record than my team. Make them lose. Stan Kroenke owns the NFL. I don't know if you know this, but the NFL built a headquarters on land right next to the Rams Stadium. That Stan Kroenke owns the land and helped develop the building. So tell me that Stan Kroenke's not got his hand in the pocket of the NFL. Real quickly though, talking about Jerry Jones, did you happen to see they released his deposition that he gave in the St. Louis lawsuit?
I did not see that.
And basically in Jerry Jones' deposition, and this is how arrogant or stupid the owners in the NFL are, but St. Louis lawyers aren't going to have to do anything because Jerry Jones basically said in his deposition, yeah, St. Louis is an NFL market. Yeah, St. Louis has plenty of corporate sponsorship. They have plenty of fan base. They sell plenty of tickets. We just wanted to move them to LA because we knew we'd make more money that way. Basically said that. Basically said we broke every one of our rules, every one of our things you have to do to move. Yeah, no, we ignored it because we wanted to make more money.
Wow. That just, once again, like you said, it gives the St. Louis lawyers absolutely everything under the sun to work with. And you have to, how can the NFL not produce a settlement out of this? I mean, they don't want this stuff coming to light because this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the stuff that's going to be coming out. I mean, Derek King has talked about this multiple times, and we're starting to hear this. The problem is, and kind of going back and hand in hand with the fact that Kroenke and the NFL are in bed together, go look at the national coverage of this. Is there any national coverage of this? No. Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk is the only one nationally that has even said anything about this. ESPN sweeping it under the rug. CBS, Fox, all the big players nationally have yet to say a single word. And here's the thing that I find the funniest. In that Dallas game last night, when Greg Zuerlein came out to kick that long field goal, Jim Nantz said something to the effect of, Zuerlein's kicked long field goals like this because he's played such a long time in the Coliseum.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many times did he kick in St. Louis? Oh, a lot. So don't give us this, he played a long time in the Coliseum. No, he made his hay in St. Louis. And you can't even get around saying that. It's a fact. Isaac Bruce went into the Hall of Fame as a St. Louis Ram, for God's sakes. So, you know what? The NFL, nationally, you got to start covering this thing because it's going to blow up in the NFL's face. And yes, you want to save face and say that you're on their side. But come on, you cannot sweep this under the rug.
But they're not going to. CBS, NBC, Fox, ESPN, they're all partners with the NFL. They all get millions and hundreds of millions of dollars from the NFL. They're never going to bring this up. They're never going to talk about it.
And it's asinine. What's going to happen when the NFL actually comes back to St. Louis? Are they going to have to talk about it? How are they going to how did St. Louis get an expansion team? How did that go about? Huh? Is it just because the NFL felt bad about us? No, it's because of the lawsuit. So, before I get any more riled up, we're going to get out of here because I got to get up early again tomorrow and go back to work. So, Cardinals win 5-2. They maintain their 3-game lead over the Reds in the wild card standings at this moment. So, big win there. The Packers 35-17 lead over the Lions with about 3 minutes left to go in this game. Jared Goff has surprisingly given up the ball about 5 or 6 times tonight. I've personally seen a fumble and an interception and an almost fumble again. So it looks like the Packers going to hold on and go to 1-1. The Lions will fall to 0-2. Lots of fun stuff coming up this week. We'll be back with you guys on Wednesday to talk about sports in the Midwest once again. Scott, you got anything before we head out?
Just going to throw out there again that we are in the middle of our Real Men Wear Pink campaign. So if you can help us fight breast cancer, we greatly appreciate it. There's a link on our page. There's a link on my personal page. Please join us in the fight to stop breast cancer. And we've got lots of fun things coming up as we really start to really kick the campaign off as we head into October. You'll see me wearing a lot of pink here in the next couple of weeks. So, but yeah, just a lot of fun stuff. And, if you can, please donate. Every dollar helps. And join us in the battle against breast cancer. And that's pretty much all I got tonight, Wags.
Awesome. Well, once again, thank you guys for joining us. We appreciate it very, very much. We'll be back on Wednesday night. For Scott, I am Wags. Enjoy your evening and have a great Tuesday.
Hey, it's you man here from Casey. For all your sports news, catch the Toasted Tavern with Scott Tobin and the man called Wags, weeknights at 9 p.m. You can follow Toasted Tavern on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Let's get toasted.